Hello everyone and greetings from a snowy Sweden. Welcome to this presentation about how to set up a warp-weighted loom in a Viking Age way, and it's based on a photograph of a find from Birka in Sweden. And my name is Caroline. I'm a teacher, an archaeologist and a historical crafter, and I really like these small-scale experiments. So this is my take on one of the small-scale experiments. It's called warping the diamonds because in Swedish the broken lozenge twill is called the diamond twill. And this experiment was conducted at Bäckedal folkhögskola. So a big shout out to them, because without them, and especially without Sophie Dudling, Emma Frost and Elinor Sydberg, this experiment would never have happened. So let's take a look at how the experiment was made.
And this experiment had a few different parts. Firstly, the photographed find from Birka had the upper edge of the weave preserved, and that was the basis of this experiment. And then I did a trial of different warping setups for a twill weave and compared them to the upper edge of the find. And finally, I did a small trial weave to test if the warping technique that I arrived at worked together with the weaving technique of the broken lozenge twill. And finally, this slide also shows a photograph of the loom that I used to make this experiment. So I've had a few hiccups in finding a good photograph that was free for me to use. So I've done a drawing of the photograph, and you can find the original photograph that I looked at for the experiment in the book Kirkes Väv, and I put the page number in the slide as well. So the most interesting part with this find is if you look at the top, there is a sort of a chain pattern, and we didn't really get this kind of chain pattern at the warp-weighted loom course. So obviously there was some kind of different technique in the warping process. So me and Sophie Durling did a trial of different warping techniques for the warp-weighted loom. And if you look at the picture to the right, you can see that blue and white pattern doesn't have that chain, but the white pattern, well, I think we managed to get the chain that looks like the find from Birka. So the way we went about to achieve this chain look was to warp in a kind of double tabby way. So as you can see, hopefully on the photographs, we're using loops. So on the first picture, you can see that the new loop is pulled through the old loop in the warp. And in the middle picture, the new loop has been woven into the setup threads and pushed up a little bit. And on the third picture, we're pulling the loop at the length of our warp, and then we're taking the loop back and making a new old loop from the first picture. And I realized this might get a little bit confusing, and it's easier to show in video form. So let's see if I can make this any clearer. So this is really a homemade setup to show the setup for making the warp with these loops.
And these are the setup threads, and they will go onto the top beam. And this is the warp thread, which will go in this direction when you're warping. And we're starting with this small loop, as you see, and we're gonna weave it, just tabby weave it into the setup threads. Oh. And make sure you're pulling the running thread. And then we're gonna pull the warp thread out, around and back again. And when it comes back, the loop, then we're gonna weave it into the setup threads again. Still the tabby weave. A little bit tricky, but it works. And now you see we have this loop, this old loop, and we're gonna take a bit of the running warp thread and create a new loop through the old loop. And then we're gonna start tabby weaving it into the setup threads again. And we're gonna pull a bit in the old warp threads, push down a bit. And this is the start of that chain pattern. Might be a little bit difficult to see on this video, but this is the start of this chain pattern that was shown in the find and in our trials at Bäckedal.
When you do this kind of warping, the result gets like a double tabby, and a double tabby is my way of describing it. As you can see on these two photographs, there are two warp threads going forward and two warp threads going backward, and this pattern repeats itself at the entire warp. So when you set it up, it looks like it's going to be a double tabby weave. This double tabby way of warping is also consistent with an Icelandic way of heddling the twill weaves. So for the diamond twill pattern, you look at the weave itself. You don't look at a diagram, you look at the weave and see all the 4 sheds in the weaving pattern. And I have numbered the shed rows in the picture to the right. And if you see the marked rectangle here, you can see that there are sheds 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the shed number 4 is the natural shed, the double tabby that you saw in the last slide, and shed 1 and 3 are mirrored. So when it's white at shed 1, it's red at shed 3. And the same goes for shed 2 and 4. They are mirrored. And here you can see that the double tabby of 2 and 4, because there are 2 warp threads red, 2 warp threads white, and it's alternating between shed 2 and 4. So this gives you an idea how to heddle your warp. On the left photograph here, you see the heddling in place. You heddle shed 1 and 3 first, and when at the time of the photograph, I'm on my way heddling shed 2. And you don't have to heddle shed 4 because that is the natural shed. So it's already divided into shed 4. And on the picture to the right, you can see how I attached the weights. And I did a little bit of a special thing here because I divided the back weights into 2 rows to get the sheds to come forward a little bit easier when you're weaving. But if you're going to divide these, I don't know if there's any evidence for this kind of a division in the archaeological material. So perhaps any one of you know. But if you're doing this, you should make sure that you're dividing them and still minding the heddling, because I did a little bit of a mistake here and it shows up in the final weave. And the final test of this experiment was to see if it actually worked to make a diamond twill or a broken lozenge twill with this kind of warping and heddling. And it did. And it wasn't a full-on reconstruction because I used modern threads. And the threads are not the same as in defined because the warp threads in this experiment are 2-ply and most weaving was done with a single strand of warp thread. And this is also a bit thicker than the original finds. But anyways, you can see that this kind of setup works, and at least one Viking Age weaver might have set up their warp in the same way as I did in this experiment. So what are my takeaways for you from this small scale experiment and also other small scale experiments? And the first lesson of all is try it. What are you interested in and how can you try it out and experiment with what you have? And you would also need a bit of a community. This project would never have happened unless I had access to the warp-weighted looms and the knowledge at Bäckedal Folkhögskola during the 2 courses that I took there with the warp-weighted loom and crafting tool. But of course, digital communities are also great, and I think you may have heard of EXARC, which is now also a digital community. Another takeaway is that if you want to investigate techniques, you can make do with the material you have access to. You don't have to make a full-on reconstruction. And especially during these times when we spend a lot of time at home, it might be easier to just use what you have. And related to that, you can come a long way with museums' digital collections, and you can come a long way with books. So you don't really have to have access to the finds themselves. But if you do have access, of course, that's a nice thing too. And the main takeaway is that even these small-scale experiments help us to understand more about the craftsmanship of the past. So don't be afraid to try. Just go out and make more experiments. So I think that my time is running out quite quickly. And I just want to say thank you for joining me on this expedition into the warp-weighted loom. And I hope that you all are going out or staying inside and making more experiments, even these small-scale experiments. And yes, enjoy the rest of the conference, and hopefully I will see you all very soon. Bye!